Well, hello guys, this is part 2 of Goosebumps series 2000 R.L Stines Invasion of the Body Squeezers part 1. This is me reading part 2. I got a comment on the Goosebumps, I think it was this book, the first part that I read, that they enjoyed it and it helped them through quarantine. So I'm going to head and read more, of course. And I'm going to read a lot of Goosebumps. And if you have any suggestions, please let me know. Contact me with my Instagram. It's Truckerchick, SHK, all lowercase. Or you can look in my bio and find the link to my email. If not, leave in the comments and we can go from there. But anyways, so this is my part 2. I can't guarantee how far I'll get, but I am going to try to get as far as I can. I have a new backlighting that I'm going to be showing you guys pictures of. Maybe I'll do it in a different video, but it's a really cool backlighting. It's like yellow and blue instead of just plain white, and I really like it. So my main concern right now is sound quality. So please let me know about the sound quality because this mic is not omnidirectional, so I have to speak into it. My next microphone will be a Blue Yeti. Alright, so we left off at chapter 7 last time, okay? Let me fix the mic here. Okay, so I'm going to wait until Mr. Fleshman is away, I decided. Then I'm going to sneak into his house and find out for myself what he is doing in there. The next afternoon I stood in the backyard and with my binoculars to my eyes, searching the stars, searching the skies. It was a clear sunny day, no clouds. A perfect day for spying on Mr. Fleshman, for spotting the comet. I couldn't believe I had seen it yet. On TV, the news reporter said it was big enough and bright enough to see even in daylight. Scientists were studying it in the night and day. They still hadn't figured out what it was. Sunlight glinted off the binocular lenses. I lowered the binoculars and rubbed the back of my neck. I was getting a stiff neck from staring straight up so long. Every few minutes I took a quick glance into Mr. Fleshman's house. Mr. Fleshman's house, nothing going on over there. His car stood in the driveway. I parked halfway in, halfway out of the garage, but I saw no sign of him or any creatures. A shimmer of silver streaked across the sky. I grabbed for the binoculars, I pressed them to my face and stared up. Only a distant airplane. "Let me see," a familiar voice demanded. "Ow." I let out a cry as Billy tugged the binoculars. She tugged so hard she nearly pulled me off my feet. "They're strapped around my neck," I cried. "We'll take them off," she tugged them again. "It's my turn." "Go away," I snapped. "We're not taking turns." I'm telling Mom," she cried. She doesn't ever get tired of telling Mom. "Go away," I snapped. "We're not taking turns. I'm telling Mom," she cried. Doesn't she ever get tired of telling Mom? "Get your own binoculars," I told her. "I'm not leaving this yard until I see the comet." "I don't need your stupid binoculars," she said, neared. "I already saw the comet. Actually, I saw it twice. No, 5 times. "Go away," I muttered. To my surprise, she went away. But she stopped in the kitchen door. "You're supposed to use a telescope, not binoculars," she called. "I don't own a telescope," I shouted back. She didn't hear me. She slammed the screen door behind her and vanished into the house. Before I could start my search for the comet again, I saw Henry and Derek trotting around the side of the house. They both wore white sleeveless t-shirts, and baggy shorts that came down to their knees. "They're coming for you, Saucer Man," Derek called. "Excuse me," I replied. He pointed up to the sky and grinned. "They're coming for you." "Yeah, it's not a comet up there," Henry chimed in. "It's a UFO. They're looking for you, Saucer Man. They want to take you back to your own planet." They both thought they were a riot. They giggled and slapped each other high and low fives. "Ha ha," I said, rolling my eyes. "Funny. Remind me to laugh." I glanced up at the sky. Two birds sailed high above the lemon trees at the back of the yard. "What's up?" I asked. "We're hanging out till Henry's dad gets back," Derek replied. "He's got a bunch of tickets to a Dodgers game, and he's taking us. Want to come?" I kicked at a clump of dirt. "Can't," I told them. "I've got to go with my parents to visit my cousins." I am reading horrible today, you guys. I am so sorry. I think it's, I don't know, my dyslexia or something. "Where, Saucer Man?" Derek demanded. I can only hope this is working good. "Mars or Jupiter." "Burbank," I replied. "Don't call me Saucer Man. Give me a break, okay?" Henry kicked the same clump of dirt. "School starts next week. You trying out for the swim team?" The binoculars started to feel heavy. I pulled them off and set them on the grass. "I don't know." I said, "I think I should." "Yeah, we need you on the team," Henry grinned. "And he added, because you make us look good." They both laughed. "That's the problem," I complained. "You guys are so much better than me, I won't even make the team." "We'll help you," Derek offered. "Yeah, we'll bring you floaties to wear on your arms," Henry joked. "Jack," Mom called from the house. "Time to go." Henry and Derek took off. "Sorry about the Dodgers game," Henry called back. They disappeared around the side of the house. "Dodgers game? What Dodgers game?" Mom asked. "Never mind," I muttered. I wasn't having a great day so far. No comet, Dodgers game, and now I had to go spend half the afternoon in Burbank with my two elderly cousins, who like to pinch my cheek and tell me how big I am growing. Mom rubbed her hand over a stain on my Lickers t-shirt. "Is that what you're wearing, Jack?" "I don't think so. Go up and change your shirt." "At least." I started to protest, but a figure moving on the other side of the fence caught my eye. Mr. Fleshman. Mom saw him too. She raised her hand and waved to him. "Let's go say hello," Mom said. "No, Mom." I started to hold her back, but she hurried over to greet him, taking long strides. I held back for a moment, but he had threatened me. He had tried to scare me. Maybe Mom will see what a creep he is, I thought. I hurried to catch up to her. Mr. Fleshman wore a black t-shirt and black running shorts, and he had a black baseball cap over his silver hair. They had already introduced themselves by the time I stepped up beside my mom. "Jack has been talking about you," Mom said. Oh, wow, I could feel the blood rushing to my face. Why did she say that? Oh my goodness. That's pretty embarrassing. Mr. Fleshman stared down. Mr. Fleshman stared down at me with those icy gray eyes. I could see the anger in his eyes, but when he turned to Mom, a smile spread over his darkly tanned face. "Okay. Beautiful day, isn't it?" he said cheerfully. "Are you doing any science experiments or anything in your house?" Mom asked him. "Science experiments?" he asked in his breathy voice. Mom nodded. "Jack keeps telling us the strangest stories about seeing monsters in your house," she laughed. Mr. Fleshman laughed too, a cold, dry laugh that sounded more like coughing than laughing. He glanced quickly at me. I felt a chill roll down my back. No monsters in my house," he told my mom. No science experiments. No science experiments. His smile faded. Want to know the truth? Yes, Mom replied. I'm an alien from another planet, Mr. Fleshman said. I keep my alien friends hidden in the house while we make our plans to take over the world. Chapter 8. He wasn't joking, I exclaimed. Mom turned to face me from the passenger seat in front. Of course he was joking, Jack. What's wrong with you? Mr. Fleshman seems like a very nice man. I sighed and adjusted my seatbelt. Mom, how do you know he was joking? I don't want to discuss it anymore, Jack, she replied impatiently. I know he was joking, and so do you. Jack is stupid, Billy chimed in. Jack is an alien. Don't call me stupid, I snapped. Don't call me stupid, I snapped. Stop it, both of you, Dad cried. Do you see the traffic backed up on this freeway? It's going to be a long drive, so give me a break. I settled back in the seat and shut my eyes. Okay, I knew Mr. Fleshman was joking, but I also knew he was lying. I saw that monster in his house, saw it clearly with my own eyes. I'll get proof, I promised myself. Hopefully this is close enough. I'll sneak into that house and get proof. The afternoon with my cousins was too boring to talk about. I'll only say that the two of them pinched my cheeks so hard they changed the shape of my face. Maybe swelling will go down in a few days. That night, Billy, Dad, and I were in the den. Billy was watching wildlife shows again, where the animals eat each other. I was trying to show Dad how to play one of the Mario games on my Game Boy. But he was having a lot of trouble. My fingers are too big for these little controls, Dad complained. Then why don't you buy me one of those virtual reality game players, I suggested. I heard Mom laugh from the living room. Jack, you already live in virtual reality, she called. I started to reply, but another news bulletin on the TV caught my eye. Dad lowered the Game Boy on his lap, and we both stared at the screen. NASA scientists are still baffled by the large object circling the Earth, the news reporter said. A photo of a shimmering round blob filled the screen. The reporter's voice continued. NASA still hasn't identified the object yet, but it is believed to be a large meteor. Wow, Dad cried, leaning closer to the TV. Look at that thing. That's amazing. The giant meteor appeared to be breaking up in our atmosphere, the reporter said. It seems to be shooting off smaller meteors. In the photo on the TV screen, I could see tiny dark circles flying away from the enormous round object. A 24-hour sky watch has been ordered by the U.S. Air Force, the news reporter continued. But the Air Force wants to assure everyone that the wild rumors about the meteor are not true. This is not a UFO. Scientists insist it is some kind of rock or mineral from deep in space. I jumped up from the couch. They're not telling the truth, I cried. I know it. It isn't a meteor. It's an alien spacecraft. Or maybe it's some kind of alien weapon, and it's firing at us. Jack, sit down, Dad scolded. Don't scare your sister. I turned and saw that Billy had moved to the window. She had pulled up the blinds and was staring out. Oh, wow. I see a meteorite, she screamed. pretty nice sound. I see it. No, it's going to crash right into the house. Huh? I scrambled on the window. Where? I see 2 meteorites, Billy declared. No, 6. I stared up at the sky. I saw the moon and a trillion twinkling stars, nothing else. Sit down, Billy, Dad scolded. You scared us all. That wasn't funny. Billy stuck her tongue out at me. Scared you, saucer man, she said, just quiet enough so that Dad couldn't hear. I shook my head at her angrily. Why did I always fall for her dumb jokes? I've got to check this out, I exclaimed. I ran up to my room and grabbed the binoculars. Then I hurried back downstairs. The backyard hadn't been lucky. I'd spent hours back there searching the sky until my muscles ached. I hadn't seen a thing. Tonight I decided I'll try the front yard. As I passed the den, they were still talking on the TV about the strange meteor. I saw Billy sitting between Mom and Dad on the couch. She looked a little frightened. Dad on the couch She looked a little frightened. Dad had his arm around her and Mom held her hands. Sometimes I get so angry at her I forget that she's just a little kid. She pretends to be tough. But this meteor thing must be very scary to her, I realized. On the TV I could hear a scientist talking about the strange space object. The public shouldn't be alarmed, I heard him say. As I headed past the den, this is certainly no reason to panic. Sir, a reporter asked. Do you think this space object will be with us from now on, like a new moon or something? At this point, we don't know, the scientist replied. We can't even make a guess. Not much of an answer, I thought. Is the government keeping something from us? I pushed open the door and hurried outside. It was a clear, warm night. The row of tall palm trees at the corner creaked and bent in a steady, warm breeze. A pale half moon floated in the low sky, twinkling full of stars. I heard kids laughing and splashing in the swimming pool behind the Arthur's house across the street. A minivan rolled by with surfboards strapped to the roof of the van, and loud country music blaring from the windows. Meteor, where are you? I murmured out loud. I raised the binoculars and began to scan the starry sky. After a few seconds I stopped. I had a sudden strong feeling, a feeling that I wasn't alone, that someone was watching me. I lowered the binoculars, turned, and saw Mr. Fleshman standing in his front yard, dressed all in black. He was hard to see at night. He also had binoculars raised to his eyes. Looking for the comet, Mr. Fleshman asked. He didn't turn to face me. He kept his gaze on the stars. Just waiting for my friends to land, he said. I laughed. You're joking, right? Joking, he replied. He lowered his binoculars, turned to face me, and I let out a yelp of horror as his eyeballs shot out 6 inches from his face. Well, Chapter 9. The eyeballs bounced up and down in the darkness. Mr. Fleshman tossed his head back and laughed. A hoarse, dry laugh. I shuddered. I felt so embarrassed. Why did I scream like that? How could I fall for such a stupid old trick? Plastic eyeballs on long strings attached to fake eyeglass frames. So lame. Still chuckling to himself, Mr. Fleshman pulled off the fake eyeglasses. He held them up to me. Want to try them? No thanks, I choked out. I felt like such a total jerk for screaming. I made them, he said, still holding them out to me. They're pretty real looking, huh? I guess I replied. Why did he pull that joke on me, I wondered. Was he waiting for me out here? Was he suddenly trying to be friendly, or did he want to scare me? Have you ever seen the meteor? I asked, gazing up at the sky. Mr. Fleshman shook his head. He crossed the lawn and stopped a few inches from me. I don't think it's our hemisphere now. It's in our hemisphere now. He said, I don't think it will orbit over us until tomorrow. Do you think it's a comet or a meteor or what? I asked. He didn't answer. He studied me with those strange gray eyes. My sister Billy is scared of it, I continued. She thinks it's some kind of spaceship or something. My mouth suddenly felt dry. I realized I was talking rapidly, talking a lot. Because I was nervous, Mr. Fleshman didn't say anything. His smile faded as his eyes locked on mine. You talk a lot to your mother, don't you, Jack? He asked. His cold, hoarse voice sent a shiver down my back. Excuse me? I blurted out. You've been telling your mother things, he rasped. He leaned over to me, so tall, those eyes so frozen, so evil. You've been telling her stories about me, he demanded. I took a deep breath. I told you, I stammered. I saw a creature in your house. I saw you fighting it. He loomed over me in the moonlight. His silver hair glowed as if electric. He clenched his jaw. I could see the vein in his neck pulsing. I don't like people telling stories about me, Jack, he said slowly, although gritted his teeth. I don't like it at all. I opened my mouth to reply, but only a frightened squeak came out. My heart pounded. My knees started to buckle. I felt I was going to faint or something. Somehow I stayed on my feet. Sorry, I choked. Then I turned and started to run back to my house. Your last warning, Jack, he called after me. That was it. Your last warning. I flew into the house and slammed the door shut behind me. I stood in the front hall, shaking, struggling to catch my breath. He can't do that to me, I decided. He can't frighten me away like that. He's hiding something in that house, and I'm going to find out what it is. I'm going to get my proof. I promised myself. He can't scare me away. The next morning I kept my promise. The next morning I sneaked into his house and I found my proof. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. Birds chirped from the lemon trees in the backyard. I sat on a stool at the kitchen counter and gulped down my frosted flakes. Why are you eating so fast? Mom asked, leaning against the counter. I always eat cereal this fast. I told her I don't like it to get soggy. She brushed my hair back. That makes sense, she said. She crossed the kitchen to the coffee maker and poured herself a mug of coffee. I gulped on the rest, raised the bowl to my mouth, slurped up the milk. Then I hurried outside to check for the meteor. Then the sun was so bright the whole yard glowed. This is chapter 10, by the way. I squinted up into the sky. Wisps of white clouds sailed overhead. And what was that white dot? A pale white dot floating low. The clouds. What was it? What was that meteor? Wow, I let out an excited cry. I had to get my binoculars. Finally, the meteor was flying into view. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I squinted up at it. A tiny white speck moving slowly under the wispy clouds. Would binoculars make it clearer? I started to turn back to the house, but I saw something move in Mr. Fleshman's kitchen window, and I gasped. I saw the crushed skull, the dangling eye, the creature. I squinted into the window, shielding my eyes with one hand. I took a few steps toward the fence. The creature didn't move. Suddenly, reflecting on the window pane made it impossible to see clearly. I squeezed through the opening in the fence into Mr. Fleshman's yard. I squinted into the window again. Gone. The creature was gone. Had it been there in the first place, or was the bright sunlight playing tricks with my eyes? The garage door stood open. I saw the garage was empty. No sign of little black convertible. I saw the morning newspaper lying near the street. Mr. Fleshman always picked up his newspaper first thing in the morning. He's away, I decided. Maybe he went away for the weekend. My chance to explore the house, my chance to find proof. Was I brave enough? Maybe. My heart started to pound. I peered through the window and the door. No one in the kitchen, no human and no creature. Should I knock? If Mr. Fleshman is home and he comes to the door, what do I say? I'll tell him I'm sorry. I spied on him, and I decided I knocked on the kitchen door. The 3 sharp raps. Anyone home, I called? Silence. I grabbed the knob. He's not home, I said out loud. I'm going in. The door was locked, but the kitchen window was open. I lifted myself over the window ledge and slid inside. I tiptoed into the kitchen. It smelled kind of peppery, spicy. I checked out the counter and the sink, no breakfast dishes, everything clean and put away. Mr. Fleshman must have left last night, I decided. I took a deep breath and started toward the back hall. Am I really doing this? I asked myself. Am I really sneaking around in someone else's house? Too late to wimp out now, Jack. I scolded myself. You're already here, aren't you? Walking silently, I took a few steps into the hall. Anyone home? I called in a tiny voice. Mr. Fleshman? No reply. The sunlight ended in the kitchen. The long hall stood in the deep shadows. I took another few steps, my eyes darting back and forth. 2 huge eyes stared out at me from the wall. I stopped and stared back. A large poster, a movie poster. Eyes of the Monster. It proclaimed in dripping red letters, gaze into its eyes and die 1,000 deaths. Okay. Whoa, I murmured. The walls were covered with old movie posters. Fangs of the Phantom. The next one read, across the hall, a tattered mummy reached a half-decayed hand toward me. The mummy's grasp. Cool, I murmured. Mr. Fleshman had the greatest collection of horror movie posters. They were framed and lined up one after another down the long hall. Where did he get these, I wondered. I'm really into old horror movies, but I hadn't heard of any of these movies. Revenge of the Leech Woman, Klong, the Vampire King. I had my eyes on the posters, so I didn't see the little table against the wall. I bumped it hard with my knee. Ow, I cried, out as pain shot up my leg. I stumbled over the table, grabbed the wall to keep from falling. A large book fell off the table, and it slammed noisily against the floor. I waited for a moment, catching my breath, waiting for my knee to stop throbbing. Then I bent to pick up the book. It wasn't a book, I realized. It was a photo album. The pages were open. I dropped to my knees and gazed at the color snapshots. Huh? A startled gasp escaped my throat. Weird, I murmured. The photos, they were all snapshots of ugly green creatures. The creatures were shaped like humans. They had very smooth, very shiny green heads and oval black eyes. Solid black eyes like big black olives. 2 nostrils in the center of their head. Right below their eyes, no noses, just nostrils. Their long green arms looked more like plant tendrils than arms. The arms ended in slender, 3-figured hands. What is this? I murmured. I flipped through the thick photo album page. The thick photo album. Dang. Sorry. 29. Okay. Mr. Fleshman nodded again. Yeah, I made him. He's radio controlled. He held up a little remote controller like a TV remote. He pushed a button and the creature's snout opened and closed. He pressed another button and the eyes blinked. Wow, that's awesome, I exclaimed. I was starting to feel a little more normal. I realized I owed Mr. Fleshman an apology. I'm sorry I sneaked into your house, I started. He held up a hand. Don't apologize, he said. I set this all up for you. I put Cutie in the kitchen window to get your attention. I saw you come in. I was waiting. But why? I demanded. First you tried to scare me away, then... My work is top secret, Mr. Fleshman replied, leaning on Cutie. I tried to stop you from spying on me, but I could see that you weren't going to stop, so I decided to give you a good scare instead. Well, you scared me, I confessed. Feeling a little bit buzzed. I apologize. Kind of. Did you like my ghost effect? Mr. Fleshman asked. He led the way back into the lab. How did you make the mist do that? I asked. It's a projection, see? He pulled out an electronic box that looked like a VCR. He pressed a button and light poured from a small lens. I project the ghost over the room, Mr. Fleshman explained. I watched the mist begin to form again. It would look so real. I watched the mist begin to form again. It would look so real. It's pretty simple, actually. Everything you saw, Jack, is special effects, but I can't have anyone spying on me and learning my tricks. I apologized again, then he apologized to me. I hope I didn't scare you too badly. Sometimes I get a little carried away, he laughed. What did you think was going on in here? I'm not really sure, I told him. I saw you wrestling with Cutie, and I was testing him out, Mr. Fleshman explained. Well, I won't tell anyone about what I saw, I promised. I followed him to the kitchen door. I started to go out, but then I remembered something. The photo album, I said. He narrowed his silver gray eyes at me. What's that? I saw that photo album, I told him, with all the green creatures in it. What was that? He sighed. Those were model creatures I built for a movie. I must have made 100 different ones. What a shame. The film never came out. Do you still have the models? I asked. He shook his head. No, the movie studio owned them, and the studio went out of business. I stepped onto the back stoop. Well, thanks for the horror show. I said, I promise I'll never spy on you again, Mr. Fleshman. He laughed. Maybe I'll use you as a tester, Jack. Try out some of my new creations on you. Wow, that would be awesome, I cried. I said goodbye and hurried home. I couldn't wait to tell Mom and Dad that I was wrong about Mr. Fleshman, that he really was a nice guy. I know they would tease me and say, I told you so, but I didn't care. I felt so relieved, so happy to know the truth about my neighbor and what went on in his house. I had no way of knowing that the scary part of my life was just beginning. So now we're on chapter 14. Well, I'm glad you solved that mystery, Mom said at dinner. She passed the bucket of chicken, my favorite, extra crispy. So Mr. Fleshman works in horror movies. I knew that, Billy chimed in. She had mashed potato gravy all over her chin. I knew all those scary things were special effects. You did not, I snapped. Did too. Did not, no way. Could we have a quiet dinner for once, Dad aside? He told Billy to wipe her chin. Then he lowered a forkful of mashed potatoes and turned to me. So the mystery is solved? No more wild stories? No more wild stories, I promised. Jack can't help it, Billy sneered. He has to tell wild stories. Do not, I cried. It's just that. Ask him why everyone calls him Saucer Man. Billy said to Mom and Dad, Go ahead, ask him. Shut up, Billy, I whispered. Why do they call you Saucer Man? Mom asked. I shrugged. Beats me. The next few days flew past quickly. The last days of summer vacation always go much too fast. I had 2 summer reading books to read. I made it through the first one and half of the second. When I didn't have my face buried in a book, I was scanning the skies, searching for the meteor. It was the biggest story on all the news shows. The silvery object just kept circling Earth, and scientists around the world were still puzzled by it. None of them could agree about what it was or where it came from. I searched and searched, but I never spotted it. Sunday night, before the first day of school, I forgot about the meteor and only think about school. Who would be my teacher? Who would be in my class? Getting undressed for bed, I felt something in my jean pocket. I reached inside and pulled out the square metal object from Mr. Fleischman's lab. I must have jammed it into my pocket that day in Mr. Fleischman's house. I realized. I turned it in my hand and examined it. It was shiny and black, about the size of a beeper. Why did I ever think this would make a good weapon against that big monster? I wonder. In my panic, I wasn't thinking clearly. The little square felt smooth all around. I pressed a small black button on the back, but nothing happened. Holding it close, I saw tiny holes across the top, 3 rows of them. Maybe it's a high-tech salt shaker, I thought. I didn't mean to take it. I'll return it to Mr. Fleischman tomorrow, I told myself. I set it down on my dresser top and went to bed. It took a long while, to fall asleep. I thought about school, and I kept thinking about everything I'd seen at Mr. Fleischman's house that day. The awesome movie posters, the ghost projection, the radio-controlled monsters. Then, half awake, half asleep, I heard voices. Tinny voices, as if from far away. Funny high voices like Munchkins from The Wizard of Oz, talking rapidly, all talking at once. Was I dreaming? Was someone talking in the backyard? I struggled to hear what they were saying, but voices slipped under the hiss and whistle of static, like a distant radio, fading in, then fading out. The static rose and fell. The voices jabbered on, like music. What were they saying? Was someone talking to me? Was someone trying to wake me up? Or was it all part of a dream? Such a frustrating dream. I really wanted to know what they were saying. I tossed and turned all night. I turned my head to one side, then the other, but the voices stayed in my ear. Tinny, almost metallic voices falling and rising over the hissing static. I buried my head in the pillow. I pulled the pillow over my head and pressed it over my ears, but the voices stayed, talking so fast, so excitedly, they didn't stop until Mom's voice awakened me with a start. Jack, Jack, she called from outside the bedroom door. Time to wake up. School. I sat straight up, wide awake. I climbed to my feet and stood stiffly. Jack, do you hear me? Mom called. Time to wake up for school. I am ready, I declared in a long, clear voice. I will obey. What? Mom called through the door. What did you say? I realized I was standing at attention, standing so stiffly at the center of my room. I am ready. I repeated shallowly the words as if I were a soldier. I will obey. Stop clowning around, Mom said. Just get dressed. Your sister's already downstairs. I stood in place, listening to her make her way down the stairs. Then I forced my body to relax. Why did I say that? I asked myself out loud. I glanced around the room. Everything appeared the same, but I felt different. I felt confused. I heard a buzzing in my head, a chirping like a million crickets. I shook my head, tried to clean out my ears with my fingers. This is chapter 15. But the soft chirping was coming from somewhere else. I started to pull on a fresh pair of jeans. A voice whispered to me, 2 voices, 3, from somewhere nearby. The voices sounded like the chirp of insects, But I understood them. When are you coming? I asked them. Can you tell me what day? I listened to their tiny, distant reply, and then I saluted like a soldier. I will be prepared, I announced to them. I stared at the square black box on my dresser top. The voices chirped from the box, several voices at once. I picked up the box. I could feel it vibrate as if the voices buzzed. What do you want me to do? I called into the box. When are you coming? And then I gasped. Who are they? Why am I talking to them? Why can I understand them? What do they want from me? A million questions flashed into my mind, a million frightening questions. I grabbed the box and tucked it into my jeans pocket. I returned it. I have to return it, I told myself, shaking in fear. The voices are doing something to me. The voices are making me act funny. We're about halfway through the book. I can't make them stop. I have to return the box to Mr. Fleshman. Mr. Fleshman was some kind of movie special effect. If it was just a movie trick, why was it making me act so strange? I pulled on a t-shirt over the jeans and quickly slipped into socks and sneakers. Then I ran downstairs through the kitchen to the back door. Where do you think you're going? Mom asked. She sat across from Billy at the counter. Billy was spooning up big globs of cereal. I have to return something, I said, pulling open the door. Not until you've had breakfast, Mom said, sharply. She pointed to the stool. Sit. The voices chirped in my ears. I will obey, I said. I turned and made my way to the counter. I plopped onto the stool across from Billy. Jack, Billy said, I'll bet you get Mr. Laker. She laughed. Mr. Laker was the hardest, strictest teacher in the school. Billy said something else, but I didn't hear her. The voices drowned her out. Jack, is your backpack all packed up? Mom asked. She crossed the room to get more coffee. I will be prepared, I said. Billy was still talking about Mr. Laker, but the voices rose in my ears. I saw Billy's lips move, but I couldn't hear her. Stop it, I screamed. I didn't do anything, Billy wailed. Leave me alone, I told the voices. I am leaving you alone, Billy shrieked. Jack, what is your problem? Mom demanded, sternly. My head cleared. I stared up at her. Why are you yelling at your sister like that? Mom asked, leaning over me. I don't know, I muttered. I can't help it. The voices started chirping again. Mom, tell him to stop staring at me, Billy whined. Jack is trying to scare me. Jack, shape up, Mom scolded. You are excited about the first day of school. I will be prepared, I said. Stop talking like a robot, Mom ordered. You're scaring your sister. And then she added, you're scaring me too. I will obey, I replied. I shut my eyes and tried to push away the voices. I knew what I had to do. I had to return the little box to Mr. Fleshman's. I jumped up, grabbed my backpack, and ran out the back door. I heard Mom calling after me, but I didn't stop. I was desperate to return the black box to Mr. Fleshman. I had the box in my hand. I started up his driveway, but the voices, they ordered me to turn around, chattering so loudly in my ears they ordered me away. I tried to fight them. I took a few steps up the driveway. I waved the box in the air in case Mr. Fleshman was watching from the front window. But a sharp pain shot through my head. My temples ached. I saw a bright flash of hot white pain. I turned and ran all the way to school, ran with the little box in my hand, the voices chattering in my ears. School went okay for a while. I didn't get Mr. Laker for homeroom. I got Mr. Hoff, who is supposedly to be really nice, and my friends were all in my class. I took the little box deep in my backpack. I didn't hear the voices all morning. I didn't hear them again until art class. Miss Hanson, the art teacher, reminded me of a buzzing bee. She's short and round and bounces from table to table in the art room. She announced that we'd spent our first day doing clay portraits. She asked Maddie to be our model, Maddie pretended to be shy as she took her place on a high stool in front of the art room. But we all know that Maddie isn't shy about anything. She struck a movie star pose. She sat perfectly so that the sunlight from the art room window slanted across her face and lit up her hair. I started with Maddie's legs. I know it's weird, but I like to start with legs and then work up to the face. The clay felt soft and warm in my hands. I started to relax and enjoy working with it. I molded Maddie's left leg. Then I started on the right leg, working on the left on the clay of the body. I wanted to think while the voices were silent, while I could think clearly without their droning. Insect chirps blocking off my thoughts. What is this box? I asked myself, and why was it in Mr. Fleshman's house? And why does it have power over me? Did Mr. Fleshman lie to me? Is it possible that he isn't a special effects man for the movies? If he isn't, what is he? Static whistled through my mind. I set down my sculpture and shut my eyes. The voices were back, chirping and chattering, talking to me, filling my brain, filling it. Jack, what do you call this? Miss Hanson's voice broke through the chirping, the whistling, the static. I opened my eyes. Miss Hanson picked up my sculpture and held it up for everyone to see. I gasped as I saw what I molded. A ball, a perfect round ball. What is this? Miss Hanson demanded. It's his brain, Maddie exclaimed nastily from the front of the room. Saucerman strikes again, I heard Henry declare. I am ready, I shouted, jumping to my feet. I will obey. I saluted, and I took the clay ball from Miss Hanson and heaved it across the room. It smacked hard against a window. The pane shuddered, but it didn't break. The ball stuck to the glass. Miss Hanson let out a startled cry. Some kids laughed. Others grew silent. Why did you do that, Jack? Miss Hanson demanded, narrowing her eyes at me. I don't think that is funny. I am ready, I repeated, speaking from my bot-like trance. They are coming. Stop that, Jack, Miss Hanson scolded. You are scaring everyone. Why did you throw that clay? Huh? Voices buzzed in my ear. I could barely hear my own voice. The others are coming from their planet, I announced. They are coming very soon. The teachers tightened on my shoulder. She turned me toward the door and gave me a gentle push. Class, she said loudly. I'll be back in a minute. Everyone stared at me as she guided me out into the hall. I swallowed hard, trying to choke down my fear. Where are you taking me? I cried. Where? Alright, we're on chapter 16 now. So then what happened at the nurse's office, Mom asked. I stared down at the 2 hot dogs on my dinner plate. I love hot dogs. I always wish we could have hot dogs for dinner every night. But tonight my stomach felt like a rock. I didn't think I could choke down a bite. So what did the nurse say to you, Jack? Dad asked impatiently. Billy stared across the table at me, shoving nearly a whole hot dog into her mouth, chewing hard. Not much, I replied. She asked me a bunch of questions, then she made me take a nap on a cot in the back. I was totally embarrassed when I came out. Just about every kid in school made fun of me. Kids I don't even know. Never mind that, Mom said, frowning. What kinds of questions did she ask you? I lowered my head. I kicked the table leg. I didn't really want to talk about this. Just questions, I muttered, about the meteor or whatever. Huh? Dad let his forkful of potato salad fall to his plate. What about the meteor? The nurse asked me if I was frightened by it. I told him. She asked me if all the news reports on TV had scared me. She said maybe that's why I'm acting strange. Mom and Dad both stared at me. I guess they were expecting me to say more. Billy burped. I stared back at them. Are you scared? Mom asked finally. I nodded yes, I'm scared. I decided to show them why. I pulled the little black box from my pocket and set it down on the table. What's that? Dad asked. Where did you get that? Mom asked. From Mr. Fleshman's house, I told them. There are voices in it, strange voices. They're silent now, but they talk to me. They Dad reached across the table and picked it up. It's a beeper, he said, turning it over in his hands. No, I protested. The voices came through it from the outer space. I think I can understand them. They talk to me. Billy laughed. Mom told her to hush up. Dad studied the back of the black box. He passed it to Mom. It's just an ordinary beeper, Jack, he said. You can't hear voices in it. But I do, I cried. They tell me what to do, and Why did Mr. Fleshman give you this? Mom demanded suspiciously. He didn't, I stammered. I took it. Then you have to give it right back, she said sternly. I know, I said. I want to give it back. The voices. Why do you keep talking about voices? Dad demanded. I hear them, Billy cried. This time they're talking to me, not Jack. Shut up, Billy, I screamed. I could feel myself losing it, but I didn't care. Shut up, shut up, shut up. I desperately wanted my parents to believe me, and I knew they never would if Billy started her dumb games. Stop screaming at your sister, Mom snapped. I don't hear anything, Dad said. He held the box to his ear and listened for a long while. Then he lowered the box and shook his head. No, not a sound, but I grabbed it back. The voices, they're quiet now. But they've been telling me things, telling me about the visitors. They're coming. You've got to believe me. They're coming really soon. By the time I finished that speech, I was panting like a dog. But at least I got it all out. Do they believe me? Mom and Dad exchanged glances. This is pretty serious, Mom said softly. Jack, I think we should take you to see Dr. Bendix. Take me too, Billy protested. She jumped up from her chair. Take me to the doctor. I've been acting strange too. I hear voices too. Take me. Sit down, Dad told her sharply. Do you see what a bad effect this is having on Billy? Mom asked. I don't care about Billy, I shrieked. Why won't you believe me? Why? I didn't wait for an answer. I grabbed the black box, shoved my back chair, dove away from the table, and took off out the back door. I had to get this thing back to Mr. Fleshman. I had to return it before I went totally crazy. And I had to find out the truth. What was it? Why did Mr. Fleshman have it? He was lying about being a special effects man. He had to be. But then, what was he? Why were these strange voices talking to him? Where were the voices coming from? I needed answers. And I needed them right away. My parents thought I was crazy. Everyone at school thought I was crazy. Only Mr. Fleshman could set the record straight. It had rained that afternoon. My sneakers slid across the wet grass. The fence boards felt wet and cold as I slipped through the opening and made my way into Mr. Fleshman's backyard. I went a few steps and stumbled over something big and alive. The creature cried out in surprise. Then it backed away from me, wagging its tail. Bruiser? I recognized our neighbor's black lab from down the block. You scared me, boy, I told the dog. I reached down to pet its head, but my hand stopped in midair. I stared at the object tucked between its jaws. A ball, just an ordinary tennis ball. Why did it frighten me so much? Why did that ball make me want to scream and scream and scream? Go home, I ordered the dog. Go home, boy. Go. I stepped around the dog and made my way to the back porch. I gasped when I saw Mr. Fleshman. He stood in the kitchen doorway in the light from the kitchen. His silvery hair glowed eerily. His gray eyes froze on mine. A strange smell spread slowly over his face. Jack, he said in a whispery voice, I've been expecting you. All right, I'm going to do chapter 17. And then we'll stop there because we're getting close to an hour. Chapter 17. Huh? I let out a gasp. Those silvery metal eyes, they seemed to be staring right through me. Icy cold, they sent chill after chill rolling down my back. Why did you expect me? I managed to choke out. His smile grew wider. He shrugged. I thought you'd probably like to see more movie magic, he said. He leaned down, bringing his face close to mine. Now that you know my secret, he whispered, I expect you want to see more movie tricks. I pulled back. No, I cried louder than I had planned. I couldn't hide the panic from my face and my voice. I held up the little black box. I found this. I stammered. I took it by mistake. I didn't mean to take it, but he waved his hand as if to say no problem. I held it out to him. I waited for the voices to try to stop me. But Mr. Fleshman grabbed the box from my trembling hand. "You found my beeper," he said, twirling it in his fingers. "That's great. I've been looking all over for it." He slid it into the pocket of his khakis. "Beeper," I cried. "No, it's not a beeper. He pulled it out of his pocket and held it up again. "Yes, it's a beeper," he said, eyeing me suspiciously. "I bought it so the movie studio can contact me when I'm not home." But I heard voices. I started. He narrowed those eerie chrome eyes at me. "Voices." "Yes, funny voices." He held it up to his ear. "Voices," he laughed. "You didn't hear any voices from this little thing, Jack. It beeps when I have a phone message, that's all." I stared at it, him studying his eyes, studying his face. Was he telling the truth? He appeared totally serious. But what did that mean? Did that mean I really was losing it? I really was going crazy? Mr. Fleshman held open the screen door. "Come on in," he offered. "I'll show you what I'm working on. I think you'll like it." No," I replied, taking a step back. I can't. I can't. It's a model of a two-headed shark," Mr. Fleshman continued. "The heads move independently, and each mouth opens and closes by a different controller. I'm having trouble with the body. I forgot to hide a lot of electrical stuff in the body, and it makes it too wide, but I really can't see it now," I interrupted. "Thanks, but I have to get back. I just wanted to return the beeper." He nodded. "Okay, some other time. See you, Jack." He headed into the house. I started to walk back to my house. My head buzzed as if it were filled with 1,000 swarming bees. I felt so confused, so worried, so upset. I need time to think about this, I decided. I can't just go home. Maybe I'll get my bike and I'll take a long ride, or try to figure out what is happening to me, or maybe I'll try to walk. I turned at Mr. Fleshman's driveway and made my way toward the street. I saw Bruiser, the big black lab, hopping home, the ball still tucked in his mouth. I glanced up at my house. The front windows were dark. I guessed that Mom and Dad and Billy were still in the dining room. They think I'm crazy, I thought sadly. And now I know they are probably right. A beeper. It was just a stupid beeper. I kicked a jagged chunk of carved pavement out of my path. It skidded over the street. I felt like kicking things. I felt like screaming and punching and kicking. I felt like opening my mouth in a deafening roar and tearing across the front lawns like a wild animal. But instead, I kicked the chunk of pavement again. This time, it crumbled in half. I lowered my head and started to walk, thinking hard, thinking about everything that had happened. At first, I ignored the shrill whistling sound overhead. I heard it faintly somewhere in the background of my thoughts. But the whistle grew louder, so loud I could no longer ignore it. I glanced up to see where it was coming from, and I saw a blazing orange ball in the night sky. A ball whirling down, down, down. Fiery red and yellow sparks shot off from all sides of it. Like fireworks, I thought. And then I didn't have time to think of anything else, because the big fireball plunged down on top of me. Its light, so blinding, so white, so blindingly so bright, swept around me, swallowing me, and I died screaming. We are now on chapter 18, and I'm going to stop there, and hopefully I will be able to finish it all by 3 readings. Okay. So, I'm going to make a marker here. Okay. And please like, subscribe, comment, especially especially comment if you have any suggestions, any advice about sound quality, any constructive criticism, or anything. I am always open to knowledge and kindness with constructive criticism. So I will see you guys. I will probably be making this the same week. This whole week I'll be working on making videos. So you guys have a great night, and I don't know if you'll be able to sleep, but if you do, then good night and sleep tight.